CBAs.
Dude,
Uh,
we've got a lot to get into.
so progress. Oh no.
Not really.
Oh.
Lack thereof. We've been having CBA calls, which is like our player representation in the league. Yep.
And you're directly a part of these, or you get like Spark Notes?
No, you are directly a part of these. But on these calls, when they see all of us show up, it shows that we're invested. And this is the most invested CBA that the league, I think, has ever been a part of, which is amazing.
I would believe that.
Yeah, super cool. There's so much to get into. And I think a lot of people who are on the outside, they're like, just sign it. Like your salary increase is 4 times, 5 times higher, but that's not it at all. And so on the last CBA, the league actually came back to us last night at like 10 p.m. And they came back and nothing happened with the revenue share. And that is the whole thing, what we're fighting for. And they go and they change our salary cap, but only like half a percentage. Like they give us like 50 to 100,000 more dollars, which is like.
That's for individual players or that's for teams?
Teams.
Right.
So like salary cap. So it's like, oh, well, you're getting more money there. But it's like, no, we want.
Salary cap doesn't necessarily mean it will even affect you directly.
No, they keep coming back and changing literally like half percentages of things we're not even asking. They won't even talk about revenue share, but that is our whole fight is revenue share. Putting all the pressure on us players to make moves. We've made moves. We're waiting on you guys to respond. And at the end of the day, like, I think they're waiting for us players to crack. I'm telling you, we are unified as it gets right now. And like, if we don't have a season, that says a lot more about the WNBA league than us because we're ready. Like, we are all training. We are all playing. We are ready to go, but we are not going to play for less than what we deserve.
That was Sophie Cunningham of the Indiana Fever, and some points were made, Owen. Thank you for joining me today on the WNBA on NBC. We are talking collective bargaining. Before, we've been doing weekly updates, but now it's like an update every couple of days because so much is happening. And so, her putting this out, I don't know when she recorded. It sounded like she recorded the day after the league sent their latest proposal. And so I believe that would have been on Monday, it sounds like, because Breanna Stewart informed us at the Unrivaled Media Availability on Monday that the league had sent an updated proposal the night before, okay? But her messaging, what she was saying on this podcast, really differs from what we recently heard from Breanna Stewart and Kelsey Plum. And she's not the only one whose messaging differed. Alicia Clark has spoken up as well. She had some posts on the internet or on social media and basically just said like they're unified and also that they're not pleased with what the league has proposed and sent to them. And so, this just feels like very mixed messaging. After Monday when Breanna Stewart and Kelsey were talking, during media availability, and then it came out that they published they didn't publish. They wrote a letter apparently to the executive director of the union with some concerns that they had, and that letter got leaked. But basically, everyone was feeling like the players don't want to strike anymore. And Alicia Clark said that's not true. And so this post that we're seeing here is her responding to a friend of the show, Callie Finn, saying, no, it's not accurate, that a strike is very much on the table. And when asked directly by Malika Andrews, she confirmed that, yes, a strike is definitely still possible. And she made it clear that, players who are just expressing their opinions aren't necessarily speaking for all. That's their personal opinions on the situation, right? And so I'm going to stop there because there's so much to unpack. But a lot of players have been weighing into this conversation lately, and we're getting some more stuff on social media. We're getting some stuff leaked. And so there's just a lot coming out right now about these negotiations.
There's so much to unpack. I think a lot of us reacted quizzically to the leak from Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart because it did come from just them and not the other 5 members of the executive committee. I think that Sophie's statement on her podcast was incredibly strong and exactly what the players need, because the league is banking on the messaging of there being fractures within the players union and amongst the players. And to the players union's credit, they came out and said 84% of us are down to strike still. That is a massive majority. And it's not really in line with the messaging that we'd heard from the league or these little leaks that are hard to identify where they're coming from. To hear that the players are unified and very ready to strike and are incredibly displeased with the league not budging on the revenue share percentage, which has been the entire point of of contention for these entire negotiations, just goes to show that the league is banking on the players union turning against one another, and they're not going to do that. And so I was very happy to see this response after the letter was leaked, because I think a lot of us were disappointed and confused as to why that letter was leaked. But it seems that the players union has gotten its messaging together in the last 24 hours.
Yeah, and this 84% number was interesting because there was some questions around what the percentage of revenue is that the league is offering. And in the question, at least that we just saw on that graphic, the union said it was 50% of net revenue. And they asked the players, would they accept that? Like, if they had to vote on that, would they accept that? And so the 84% said no, they would not accept that, which is a majority. We don't know how many players responded to this survey, so we have to, make that clear. Also, the league, or at least the latest reporting has been that the league is actually offering 70% of net. So those are two drastically different numbers, but neither side has put out their math and showed us how they got to the numbers. So we actually don't know which one is accurate, and I would love it if that was clarified, but we don't have the answer to that. But based on that question asked to the players, they said that they would not accept that proposal. And we also don't know when they sent that proposal around either, so maybe those results were based on before they got the league's latest offer. Either way, I think that should be clarified. So, I don't know, but I just want to make that clear. So we are presenting, both sides. But I think that Sophie also made it clear on her podcast that they will not budge on revenue, and that is the issue. That is the issue. She made that point multiple times during her podcast, and that's why I've always said it's hard to move on other things where your big issue, where your key issue, you're far apart on. And in my opinion, they're still far apart.
It absolutely seems like they're far apart. And I think that the timing of all of this is important. The fact that the league went those 6 weeks that spanned the entirety of January, not giving a counter proposal to the players union, and when they showed up at that in-person meeting in, I believe it was early February, didn't have a proposal. Then they do give the players union the counter proposal a few days later, but that was 6 weeks that lapsed. And then they're the ones setting this deadline of, hey, we need to have a decision by March 10, or to get, free agency started, to play in the draft, expansion drafts, all these things that need to be checked off once a deal is reached. If a deal is reached, it has to go both ways. So I think that that's a very key part of it, and is intentional on the league side.
It's definitely a bargaining tactic, and that's really apparent. So I'm not sure. I guess there have been players who have been critical about it. Natasha Cloud being one of them, and there's other, like Kia Stokes put something up in her on Instagram, maybe her story, but she also expressed like annoyance, if you will, about what they did. But I'm a little surprised that Breanna Stewart and Kelsey Plum haven't been more critical about that. Now, Breanna Stewart did actually make clear that from their perspective, Adam Silver hasn't been very involved in negotiations, which is very different than what he said when he was at NBA All-Star Weekend. He said he's very involved behind the scenes. So maybe they're just, I don't know, missing each other, or she's not aware of what he's doing behind the scenes. But I thought that was interesting. And there's just like some other little tidbits that have come out that I wasn't aware of. 8 years? Did you realize that this was going to be an 8-year collective bargaining agreement? Or that's what's proposed on the table?
I did not. That came as a surprise to me. And I should state, I probably should have stated this at the top. I'm not a CBA expert. This is not my area of expertise. I'm a WNBA expert and very passionate about the players getting what they deserve. But I had no idea it spanned 8 years. And to me, that's all the more reason for the players to continue to stay unified and fight for greater than 15% of the gross revenue. Because if you're coming at this from a fan's perspective, someone who's not a CBA expert, but just someone who has a vested interest in the league, you look at all the people rushing to buy these expansion teams, all these ownership groups who are incredibly eager to get in on being a part of the WNBA. And you can't tell me that this revenue's not going to continue to skyrocket over the span of that 8 years. You have so many massive superstars in this league, young superstars who've come in the last couple of seasons. Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, Paige Beckers. You've got Juju Watkins entering the league soon in a few years. That revenue is going to continue to go up. And I think that is why this is such a critical time, is if you lock yourself into an 8-year deal where you're sacrificing on revenue share, it's just not good business.
Yeah. I'm actually like floored by the idea of an 8-year deal, because even in the media rights deal, there's language providing for them to revisit like how that's divided and split, right? Because the expectation is like it's how the league is valued and the teams, like valuations are going up for all the different teams. It's inevitable. And so 8 years is a really long time period for a league that's clearly in a period of growth, right? And so because you don't really know if you're going to have a long deal, you probably need to have like early opt-out options, because just clearly the league is in a period of growth. And so that really surprised me. And then also that they want to start training camp on March 1st. That was something that Sophie Cunningham said in her podcast. And I'm like, March Madness like is still being played in March. I just don't understand some of this stuff. And she made some excellent points where she says, like, if they want 10 more regular season games out of them. You want more of their time. You want the season to go longer. You want it to go to November 30th, but you don't really want to pay them more. That doesn't really seem to jive, because usually if you're asking for more of someone's time, you have to compensate them for that time. And so again, it comes back to, I know the league's perspective, they feel like they are compensating them, right? And I also thought it was interesting when Sophie said, well, they keep coming back to us with things we didn't ask for, right? And and so I don't know if like what she's speaking about, but they did come back with some changes in their latest proposal. So one is with the rookies, right? Now they can, depending on if they made some all WNBA teams, they can get a max contract deal in their 4th year. So that's a change. But that only benefits 3 players, Owen: Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark, and Paige Beckers. So, so that's a change, right? Those are the players that are already protected, right? And so who are you really helping? The middle class, like Natasha Cloud has talked about, that's a majority of the players. So where's the stuff for them? They had some other provisions too, that they came back with in the CBA. And so, but I don't, again, like Sophie said, like this is not the stuff that we are asking for. And so why is that the stuff that you're making changes to, but not at all on the revenue? Like, just not addressing it at all, you know?
100%. And I think the point about the middle class of players is very important, because we're always going to talk about the superstars. They're always going to be good. We're talking about the rookies, and I give the league credit. This is something that should be put into the new CBA. But you're right. The middle class of players is the majority of WNBA players, and you have to bargain for all of your players. And I think that's what was so confusing about the letter from Kelsey Plum and Breanna Stewart, since it didn't seem to align with what other players were saying. And I don't want to put words in their mouth or ascribe intentionality where I don't have it. So I won't. But what I will say is that I'm very glad that players like Alicia Clark are speaking up and fighting for the middle class of players. Natasha Cloud too. And by the way, those are two players who are like incredibly accomplished, both champions, multi-time champions. They're players who, you know, are on the top end of this so-called middle class. But what we're talking about is finances and not career accolades or how good someone is on the court. We're talking about players in that middle 80% being able to make as much money as they can possibly make from a basketball career that at best is going to last 20 years, right? We want these players to be taken care of going forward, and so much wear and tear is put on their bodies. So much is asked of them. You know, as you mentioned with Sophie bringing up in her podcast, the idea of a March 1st training camp. Already rookies come into the league in a total blur. I mean, off of an incredibly demanding college season, they turn right around. They have to decide whether they're going to declare. Then they have to do draft prep, go to the draft, and then they're in training camp, and it's another full season. You see so many rookies after their rookie year incredibly burnt out, and then still many of them go and play overseas or play at Athletes Unlimited, play at Unrivaled. So much is asked of these players, and so all that anyone asks in return is that they're compensated in a way that they deserve.
Yeah, and you know, to bring this point home for the middle class, because it's always this talk around the average salary. And so what the league proposed in their offer when they came back is a salary cap in the first year would be $5.7 million. And they've been around that number, but it's up 280% from last year's, right? And so this would grow to $8.5 million by the 6th year of the deal. So it would take 6 years, Owen. And then the deal would result in maximum salaries increasing. But we know that most players are not going to get the max, right? So from $249,000 to $1.3 million, and average salaries increasing from $120,000 to $540,000. But that's where Lexi Brown has brought up, we need to know basically what the median is, right? Like what is that number? Because most players aren't even making the average salary.
Absolutely. And you look at players too in the previous iterations of the salary cap have taken discounts even on top of the fact that the salary cap is already a fraction of what it should be. So you look at players like Asia Wilson or Jackie Young who've taken team-friendly discounts. There's so much, the idea of back pay almost, like there's so much money to be made up for players who are already in the primes of their career, who have already given the league years and years of service. And you just hope that they're able to make that up in the future. And that's where revenue sharing comes in, because this league is absolutely thriving. We all love it. We all believe in it. And it's just a question of whether the league is going to open the books and budge from that 15% figure that so far it has not seemed willing to budge on.
Well, time will tell, because the imposed deadline is looming. It's soon. And so we're going to get our answers sooner rather than later. Owen, thank you so much for joining me today on the WNBA on NBC. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're the WNBA on NBC, so you do not miss out.